Welcome to the Fountains Studio celebration. As we observe Palm Sunday this week, it's good to be reminded of a couple of things that have been lost over the years. First off, what's with the palm branches? I'll say more about it in the message, but suffice it to say that back in the 1st century, the palm tree and palm branches were commonly understood to be a symbol of an independent Judah or Israel, free from Roman or any other outside occupation. And secondly, we need to readjust our understanding of the tenor of the crowd shouting Hosanna that day. Most Christians have come to think of Hosanna as meaning hooray or woohoo, but if you check out the meaning of the word in Hebrew, you might be surprised. It actually means save us. So if Palm Sunday were to happen today, Hosanna might have been something more like, hey, hey, ho, ho, Pontius Pilate has got to go, hey, hey. You get the idea. So as we enter into our observance today, remember that this was not some happy celebration of this great guy named Jesus. People were waving a blatant anti-Roman political symbol and shouting to a potential political liberator, save us, save us. All of which led directly to Rome's decision to do what they did with any run-of-the-mill agitator, snuff him out. So, in the spirit of the day, wave them if you got them. And wherever you're joining us from, whenever you're joining us, we're glad you're here. Right?
Join us as we get in the Spirit. Surprising God, you come to our lives in ways we do not expect. We ask for success.
You teach acceptance.
We ask to be loved.
You ask us to love.
We ask for ease.
You challenge us.
We ask for a triumphant Messiah.
You come as one obedient to death.
We glorify the winner.
You glorify the loser who died on a criminal's cross.
Walk among us, surprising God of peace.
Be present in our time of celebration.
Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.
Hosanna in the highest.
Ride on in majesty. The palms of fir with certainty. Your claim to be Messiah.
Let's affirm the Fountain's mission together.
As followers of Jesus,
We put love first.
today our Lenten wreath reflection is a setting of the spiritual insights of the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran. They have been reinterpreted by our own Hobbs Hobgood. This week, we consider Palm Sunday.
In many ways, we're always in Exodus, always looking for a promised land, hoping to find a flourish of palm fronds around every corner.
We miss the subtleties of the divine, distracted by life. All the while, holiness is calling writ large.
Are the world's troubles, terribly important today, too exhausting tomorrow? The day after Palm Sunday, the streets are empty.
Promised lands like rainbows seem beyond our grasp.
Longings become real only when seen through the heart's eye.
When paths unfold where least expected.
As we wave our palms and shout, "Save us," are we really ready for the call Jesus places on our lives? Khalil Gibran reminds us how incompatible our teacher is with the status quo.
Many times the Christ has come to the world and has walked many lands, and always he has been deemed a stranger and a madman.
Let us remember the words of Jesus saying,
The light is with you for a little longer. Walk while you have the light, so that the darkness may not overtake you.
Goodness is stronger than evil. Love is stronger than hate. Light is stronger than darkness. Life is stronger than death.
As we come to this time of quiet and openness, may we breathe deep. Still the chatter in our minds and open ourselves to the nearness of the source of life. We breathe in a rhythm that connects us with all of life. And in the quiet, we long for our souls to be at rest. In the silence, may we sense the presentness of the Spirit in us, around us, in all times and places. May we be grateful for an awareness of the gift of life. And may our hearts and minds be open.
Be with me, Lord. Be with me, my Lord. When I'm in trouble and
God of all times and places, we confess that we would rather join the crowds than stand alone. We prefer the popular point of view to a solitary witness for justice and truth.
We like safety and security while shrinking from the risk of involvement. We'll sing Hosanna when everyone else is doing so, but not when the hostile Good Friday forces may hear us.
We do not like to admit our lukewarm response to you, but neither do we want to be considered fanatics. Be patient with us, God.
Strengthen us to not be anxious or run away from your call on our lives, even when events on the horizon seem ominous. Remind us that you'll be with us in every part of life.
This is our prayer.
We offer this time of quiet, bringing our whole selves in the name of the one who taught his first followers to pray the prayer we now sing together.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us as we forgive others, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom and the power and the glory are yours forever.
My name is Karen Bailey, and the reason that the Fountains is so important to me is because of the loving, welcoming feeling that I had the very first time we went there. The people are wonderful. David is wonderful. I have never felt so welcome in a church that I've attended or been a member of as I have the Fountains. I think that the people at the Fountains and David and this church represents everything that God has planned for a citizen Christian to be. I love this church. It has meant so much to me. It has meant so much to my family. We always felt welcome. We always felt loved. And we always enjoyed going, hearing the sermons, and having to be with the people of the church and know that we were part of them and that they accepted us and that we were part of the family. I think that one of the greatest things that we had is how the Fountains is so acceptance of Nelda and I, and that they were able to accept the fact that we were the ones that sued for marriage and were getting married. And David officiated at our wedding, and it was the most wonderful day. It was a magical day. He was wonderful. The service was wonderful. The people from the church came. We just were amazed at what all he does, what the church does to accept the LGBTQ community. They have always been there with open arms. After our wedding, we helped serve at the Watkins shelter. And after our wedding, they said, don't leave Karen and Nelda. And the church had brought a wedding cake. And we were able to serve that to the people at Watkins too. And that was such a great feeling to know that they did that for us and that we were able to share it with the people at Watkins. And that's the kind of thing they do, that the church is welcoming to everyone. We've enjoyed going to the different religions with David and reaching out to all the different religions and being acceptance of all the different religions and all of the different ways of life have been the most marvelous thing. That truly is what God wants, a plan to be a Christian. People need to really, really learn to support the Fountains because it is such an unusual church and that is welcoming and loving. And we need churches like this. We need people like David. We need people like the members of the church that are willing to get out and work for everyone, not just a select group, but they're welcoming for everybody. And we need people to support a religion like this and a church like this. Oh, I do love you. I love this church and I love David so much.
Every day, the Fountains makes it a priority to put love first in the world.
And we especially want to express our heartfelt thanks to you for joining us online and being part of our digital family.
Each week, we share different ways you can contribute in support of our online community, whether it's by scanning the QR code on your screen, visiting give.weputlovefirst.org, or using the Ranco mobile app. You're just a few clicks away from making a difference. Once you're on the secure giving page, be sure to select the studio celebration option for
Your contribution is just one way of showing that you're here and that the studio matters to you and you want to support this vital digital outreach.
So no matter where or when you're tuning in, we're so thankful you're with us.
Thanks in advance for supporting the studio financially.
Two processions entering Jerusalem, two opposing kingdoms on display. Which of these processions are we part of? Which one will we follow on its way? Will we shout Hail Pilate or Hosanna? When we have a choice whose praise to sing, will we trust the violent, mighty ruler? Will we trust the peaceful peasant king? Two processions entering Jerusalem, power of love against the love of power. Will we choose the path of domination? Will we let compassion have its hour? God has had a dream of joyful justice. Rome has spun a nightmare of neglect. If we join the commonwealth of servants, we may bring God's joy and justice yet. Two processions entering Jerusalem, realm of hope, dominion built on fear. As we choose the path that love has opened, we will see the realm of hope God's given Jesus Christ the Son. And now let the weak say I am strong. Let the poor say I am rich, because of what the Lord has done for us. Give thanks with a grateful heart. Give thanks to the Holy One. Give thanks because God's given Jesus Christ the Son. Give thanks.
Our passage today is one of those great examples of how each one of the Gospels adapts the Jesus story to their own agenda. Everybody thinks they know the story of Palm Sunday, but guess what? If we just had today's passage from Matthew, there would be no Palm Sunday. Why? Because there's not a palm branch to be had in Matthew. It's primarily garments thrown on the road, with some ill-defined branches thrown in for good measure. But hang on. There are no palm branches in Mark or Luke either. At least in Mark we have leafy branches. But if you want palm branches, you have to go to John. And there's a good reason why. While all of the Gospels were written after the sacking of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple in 70 of the Common Era, John was written maybe as long as 25 or 30 years after that. John then takes what is already a highly charged political moment from the first three Gospels and amps it up to be even more political. And here's where people who say religion and politics don't mix give away their having A, never read the Bible, and B, having no clue about the context in which the Bible was written. What most people don't know about the context is what I already mentioned at the beginning of the studio. The palm tree and palm branches in particular were commonly understood to be a symbol of an independent Judah or Israel. We know this in part because Rome commemorated the destruction of the Jews by minting a coin in 71 of the Common Era, celebrating the destruction of the Jews. The front features the conquering Emperor Vespasian and says, Emperor Caesar Vespasian Augustus, chief priest, holder of tribunician power, consul for the third time. And the reverse shows a conquering Roman soldier overseeing a dejected Jew sitting under what? You guessed it, a palm tree. The inscription reads, Judea capta, Judah captured, and served as a powerful piece of Roman propaganda, marking not only a military victory, but also sending a message to every other Roman province. This is what happens when you rebel against Rome. So imagine with me the author of John writing 60 plus years after Jesus' death and with full knowledge that Rome absolutely crushed Jerusalem in 70 CE. The author changes the story up and has the crowds waving an incendiary political symbol, equivalent to Muslim protesters waving Palestinian flags at Israeli forces occupying Gaza and the West Bank. Heck, the author of John may have had a couple of Judea capta coins sitting on his desk and decided to add the palms to his story as a symbolic swipe at Rome. So let me be clear. When you are waving palm branches, it's political. And don't forget, we need to readjust our understanding of the tenor of a crowd shouting Hosanna. In Hebrew, Hosanna does not mean hooray or woohoo. It means save us. So even if the crowds in Matthew are not waving a blatant political symbol like they are in John, they are shouting something that is no less concerning to the Romans. Save us! Save us! So it's time to retire the cloying, Victorian, sweet by and by hymns like, Hosanna, loud Hosanna, the little children sang. Through pillared court and temple, the lovely anthem rang. To Jesus, who had blessed them, close folded to his breast, the children sang their praises, the simplest and the best. Oh, please. This is hymnological malpractice. And the fact that churches are still singing this blather is testimony that our clergy are hostages to the status quo. And one of the reasons why churches have lost their relevancy to so many. We promote made-up, saccharine sweet drivel. So, let's not sugarcoat it. Let's take this episode seriously and try to get a sense of the powder keg moment that it describes.
When they had come near Jerusalem and had reached Bethphage at the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them,
Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied, and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, just say this, The Lord needs them, and he will send them immediately.
This took place to fulfill what had been spoken through the prophet, saying,
Tell the daughter of Zion, Look, your king is coming to you, humble, and mounted on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey.
The disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put their cloaks on them, and he sat on them. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from trees and spread them on the road. The crowds that had went ahead of him and that followed were shouting,
Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven.
When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was in turmoil, asking, Who is this?
The crowds were saying, This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth in Galilee.
Let me let you in on a secret about Palm Sunday. Whatever else happened on that day, we can be sure that Jesus was not the only one entering the city. 2 distinct processions entered Jerusalem that day. We all know about one of them. We heard about it in the gospel text today. And if we've grown up in the church, then this is the procession that we've known about since we were children. It looks really cool on the felt board, and it's the day an usher hands you the perfect weapon to use during the service to whack your little brother until your mother takes it away from you. Not that I know anything about that personally, I've just heard stories. Anyway, Jesus enters Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, riding on a donkey. As you can see from these pictures from one of our trips to Jerusalem, the temple would have stood where you see the golden dome of the rock today. And it's a steep path down into the Kidron Valley before trudging back up into the crowded old city. But there was another procession that was entering Jerusalem on that first Palm Sunday. In their book, The Last Week, Marcus Borg and John Dominic Crossan tell us all about it. We don't know about this procession from the Bible, but from the 1st century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, who writes about the Jewish homeland during the time of Jesus. On the same day we now call Palm Sunday, there would have been another procession entering Jerusalem from the opposite side of the city. Jesus' procession came down the Mount of Olives from the east. But entering Jerusalem from the west would have been a very different kind of procession. Roman troops, both mounted cavalry and foot soldiers. And at the head of that procession would have been none other than the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. Pilate was normally headquartered in the first century capital of Roman-occupied Palestine, Caesarea Maritima. It was an upscale Greco-Roman city with luxury villas, baths, hippodrome, theater, and Roman temples. But built under the direction of Herod the Great, it also included a spectacular artificial harbor. Even though it's about 50 miles northwest of Jerusalem, every year Pilate felt compelled to leave his sophisticated outpost of Roman power and culture and, taking his place at the head of a squad of Roman soldiers, make the trek up to Jerusalem. Why? Because every year, without fail, during the festival of Passover, which was a whole week long, Jewish nationalism would flare up in the form of riots and disturbances against Roman occupation. Essentially, the Roman garrison stationed at the Antonia fortress overlooking the temple needed reinforcements. So, try to visualize it. From the west, the Roman governor himself, at the head of a column of mounted cavalry and armored Roman foot soldiers. And at the head of it all would be the insignia of empire, long wooden poles with golden eagles on top, the banners and symbols of empire. Now, don't think that Jesus didn't know about Pilate arriving with reinforcements, because it happened every year, and everybody knew it. So yes, Jesus deliberately chooses to enter Jerusalem from the opposite side of the city in what can only be called a counter-demonstration. If you read the story in Mark, the first teller of the story, it's really clear. Jesus sets it all up. He tells the disciples, go into the village over there and you'll find a donkey tied. Bring it to me, and if the owner asks you what you're doing, tell them that the master needs it. Jesus has obviously prearranged this. Then, as Jesus rides this donkey into the city, his followers shout the dangerously provocative, "Save us! Save us!" cheering his entrance in what is a deliberately staged counter-demonstration to what is happening on the other side of the city. And what does it all mean? Well, the gospel writers are portraying Jesus using symbolism familiar to anyone who knows Hebrew scripture. In the 9th chapter of Zechariah, we are told about the first of two different types of kings. The king of peace will enter Jerusalem mounted on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Why? Because this is a peasant's animal or a woman's animal. No self-respecting man would ride a donkey in first century Jewish Palestine unless he were a radically impoverished peasant. And then, in the 9th chapter of Isaiah, a warrior king is described, one who will enter Jerusalem riding a war horse. Those two different kinds of kingships, the king of peace and the king of war, symbolize the choice we've been given. The kingdom of God, prioritizing justice and peace, and the kingdom of empire, achieved through power, violence, domination, and control. From the west, the Roman governor enters the city at the head of an intentionally intimidating imperial procession. Jesus, on the other hand, enters the city from the opposite direction, representing an alternative vision for the world. As we know, the tension between Jesus and the authorities grows and grows, and before the week is over, the Romans crucify him. For me, these aren't crusty old nuances of history. The story of these two processions raise questions that make me wrestle with my life and the world I live in the here and now. It's hard to believe, but it's been 10 years since the Fact or Fiction campaign, where 8 other churches here in Fountain Hills collaborated on a 6-week sermon series called Progressive Christianity, Fact or Fiction. Clearly, they thought it was an okay idea for a majority of churches in town to wield what they thought was strength in numbers, to not only try to intimidate the Fountains, but to discredit us as a threat to their understanding of Christianity. One pastor even went so far as to declare that the inclusive, welcoming, interfaith attitude of the Fountains was like a, quote, virus that for the health of Christianity needs to be wiped out. So, which procession are they with? Jesus and his humble, compassionate challenge to the status quo, or a misguided Roman-style projection of power, threats, and intimidation? Happily for the Fountains, the whole episode turned out to be an inflection point in our journey together as a community. Instead of being intimidated into silence, we doubled down on putting love first and the other Jesus-y things we knew we were called to live into. Even our then bishop, Bob Hoshibata, assured us that, as far as he was concerned, we were doing right by the gospel and should resist the urge to buckle in the face of bullying from others. To this day, I think that particular collective act of intimidation from those other churches, which at first seemed like a potentially devastating crisis, was the most affirming and clarifying event the Fountains has ever faced. If you consider our response as an answer to the question, which procession are you in? We answered with a resounding commitment to the kind of compassionate, selfless, and inclusive love that Jesus modeled in his life. And we're the stronger for it. Today, we're facing another threat to the basics of what Jesus asked us to be on about. Just this week, it was announced that the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness was being defunded. Why? Because federal rules forbid recipients of federal funds to require homeless people to, say, attend religious services or be sober before they receive aid. But Project 2025 wants to prioritize giving money to faith-based aid groups so they can proselytize people before they receive a meal or a bed. Meanwhile, secular nonprofits who have recently cut the number of homeless veterans in half are being defunded. Likewise, in a kind of Stalin-esque nightmare, the State Department has created an anonymous tip line for State Department employees to turn in their coworkers. For what? Anti-Christian bias. An example. Let's say the U.S. Embassy in Uganda, where being gay is a death penalty offense, flies a pride flag in solidarity with LGBTQ plus Ugandans who are living in fear for their lives. Then, a fundamentalist Christian employee of the State Department objects because true Christians believe being gay is wrong. If she is told, no, we're not taking it down, she can then turn in that coworker or supervisor to face disciplinary action or firing for being anti-Christian. If you don't believe me, check out the whitehouse.gov website for details. Trust me, I could go on. There are countless other examples where privileged white Christian nationalists are using their influence to intimidate, defund services, rendition people to foreign prisons, or simply be cruel to the very people Jesus told his followers to favor: the widow, the orphan, and the refugee, the blind, the voiceless, and the suffering. Friends, 2 processions entered Jerusalem that first Palm Sunday, and they still do today. Power, privilege, and oppression, or compassion, justice, and a preference for the downtrodden. Which procession are you in? Every day I wake up to news that reminds me of Dorothy Parker's eternal question: what fresh hell is this? As followers of Jesus, we are facing a kind of surreal challenge to our basic understandings of the values Jesus expected us to live out. Clearly, our fundamentalist Christian friends value intimidating people into right belief and shallow performative expressions of piety over the radical inclusivity and care of the outcast and the stranger that Jesus modeled in his life. For me, being a follower of Jesus involves listening to the excluded and disenfranchised so we can work together at transforming the world for the better. Sadly, just as it always has, the status quo, be it Rome, Project 2025, or 8 pious pastors from Fountain Hills, find Jesus' agenda to be threatening. So, as we enter into Passover and Holy Week, let us be reminded of the journey of transformation that God calls us to be on, from slavery to freedom, from prioritizing our own needs above others to embracing the power of community, from giving in to fear of the other to celebrating the gifts of diversity, equity, and inclusion that Jesus himself taught his first followers. The ministry and witness of Jesus demands that we take risks in our personal lives and work to organize ourselves in community in a way that benefits, say it with me, the widow, the orphan, and the refugee, that reaches out to the outcast and speaks for the voiceless. It means taking on the concerns of those who genuinely have cause to be shouting, "Save us! Save us!" And right now, that's a whole lot of people. That first Palm Sunday, 2 processions entered Jerusalem, and they still do. Which procession are you in? Be well. Don't forget, if you liked what you heard today, buy me a coffee. The link's in the description.
Right on, the time is right. The roadside crowd scream with delight. Palm branches mark the
Join me in these words of challenge and blessing as we go. Whenever we are serving a noble and unpopular cause with selfless devotion, holding to the ideals of truth and justice,
that is Palm Sunday.
Whenever we are seeking to uplift the fallen, to comfort the brokenhearted, to strengthen and encourage the weak and hopeless,
that is Palm Sunday.
Whenever we are working bravely and persistently in the face of abuse and criticism to establish more equitable relations in the world,
that is Palm Sunday.
Whenever we are sacrificing our lives on behalf of what we believe to be the service of love for all humanity,
that is Palm Sunday.
Go in peace.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Oh, you are home.